facing its past. France has scrapped a controversial law called Code Noir, or Black Code. It classified people in its colonies as property. But why now? And what does it mean for the descendants of the millions of victims of French colonialism? And will there be reparations? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Tom McRae. It's a law many were shocked to discover still existed in France. The Code Noir, or Black Code, dates back 400 years and outlines the rules that governed slavery in French Caribbean colonies. Rules that allowed slave owners to treat their labourers as property that could be bought, sold and inherited. That permitted cruel punishment such as beatings, often to death, and hangings. This week, French MPs voted unanimously to repeal the legislation. But is that enough, and does it offer reparatory justice to the descendants of the victims of slavery? We will go to our guests in just a moment, but first, this report from Ferdia Carr.
In a rare moment of unity for France's National Assembly,
pour 254 contre 0, l'Assemblée nationale a adopté.
Deputies voted unanimously to repeal the 17th century laws that governed enslaved people across French colonies. The Code Noir, or Black Code, was a series of royal edicts that classed African slaves and their children as movable property. They permitted slave owners to administer cruel punishments, including death, and allowed the mutilation and branding of slaves who tried to escape. The legislation became defunct when France abolished slavery in 1848, but they were never formally removed from the law books. It has remained an open wound since.
Le silence, voire l'indifférence.
The silence, even indifference, that we have maintained for nearly 2 centuries regarding this Code Noir is not an oversight, but it's become a form of offence.
Un défi à ceux qui nous fondent.
The bill requires the government to prepare a report on the lasting consequences of slavery on racism and discrimination in France, and how the history of slavery is taught in schools.
No vote alone can repair centuries of shattered lives. The greatness of a republic is not measured only by what it commemorates, but also by how it protects human dignity today.
It still needs to pass the Senate, but campaigners see it as a first step towards reparations, a contentious issue.
Do we make reparations to the descendants of slaves themselves? Which family do we compensate? You can see that it's going to be complicated. It would probably be somewhat inaccurate and perhaps a little excessive in any case to draw an absolute link between the past and everything that exists today.
For many people, reparations are about addressing the present.
It is truly absurd to only consider the repeal or cancellation of the Black Code in 2026. But it also reveals a sad reality given our history. The descendants of colonizers were compensated when slavery was abolished. This shows that the abolition of slavery never truly happened for us. It was all just talk.
Poverty rates in French overseas territories like Martinique and Guadeloupe are far higher than in mainland France. And some former colonies have called for international debt cancellation, as well as support for healthcare and education. But concrete promises were not part of the bill, and President Macron, to date, has avoided making any commitments. Ferdia Carr, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Okay, let's bring in our guests now. Joining us from Paris is Liliane Umubuyi, co-founder and executive director of the African Futures Lab. She specialises in decolonisation and reparatory justice. In the US city of New Haven in Connecticut is Marlene Daut, a professor of French and African diaspora studies at Yale University. Also in Paris is Anne Giudicelli, a global relations expert and former security analyst for the French Foreign Office. Thank you so much for joining us here on Inside Story. We really do appreciate it. Liliane, if I can begin with you, obviously, as we saw there in the story, incredibly emotional scenes in Parliament. What does this mean for the millions of victims of French colonisation? Does it bring them any sort of justice?
Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for this question. I think the first thing to say that it is a significant step. It's a significant move, but it's not enough in the sense that the existence of this code still reflects the fact that the slavery system, the architecture, the normative architecture, but also the economic structures are still alive. And the fact that we are not dismantling them, that people are still living with them, makes the abolition of this legislation symbolic. Not it doesn't mean it's meaningless, but I think it's not enough if you consider the current realities and what you have just we have just seen in the overseas territories where there are significant inequalities in terms of economic inequalities, social inequalities. So I think we have to understand it in this broader context of the existing realities by understanding it as a step, but not far and not enough at all compared to the contemporary realities of people and the descendants of slaves and of enslaved people.
A good first step. And you're obviously in Paris also. How have you viewed it? And the French people, how have they viewed this decision? Obviously, the vote was unanimous, but do you think it was just largely symbolic? And what does it actually symbolise, do you think, for the French people?
Yeah, thanks a lot for inviting me. Sure, it's, of course, there is an objective of, let's say, forgetting the past, in the meaning that it was like sleeping a law that has been, which is not at all applicable nowadays due to the French criminal laws. So, but still, it's a kind of ghost for the French history. So it was important to address it. And if I'm well informed, I have got that the bill also has some perspective, which is to study the consequences, report on the consequences on slavery in the colonies and past French, the previous colonies, French colonies, sorry, and also in let's say in the ground, in the field of racism and discrimination, and also how to teach this history in school.
Right.
So let's say that is not probably not what most of the some part of the French society would like to get. I mean, more meaning reparation. So now let's say that the line is in France for between the threat of repentance, as some says, and the other is denial. So the idea is to find the right balance in order to keep a kind of, let's say, consensus on how to implement this decision.
Okay. Marlene, can you just talk to us a little bit about Code Noir? I mean, as we know, we saw in the story, it set the rules for slavery. It has been described by some as the most monstrous legal text of modern times. Can you just give us a bit more detail about what was in it and the reality of what that meant?
Yes, absolutely. The Code Noir was wholly monstrous. But, there's a lot of misconceptions about it. So it's created to regulate this massive slave system in the Americas that France had. But actually, its first article expelled Jewish people from the colonies. Later articles talked about what would happen if an African woman had a child with a white Frenchman, for example, and whether or not that child would be enslaved based on the religion of the mother. It classified enslaved Africans as movable objects, property. And so one of the problems with this largely symbolic act, if we consider that really the time for symbols has passed, is that according to a study done by the FME, which is the foundation which studies slavery in France, only 10% of French school children learn about slavery in the classroom in high school if they are not in Martinique or Guadeloupe or Réunion. So this is metropolitan France. Hardly any of them learn about the Haitian Revolution. And of course, the colony of Saint-Domingue was the island where France forcibly imported the most captive Africans, nearly 900,000. This vastly eclipses the number that the French forcibly sent to Guadeloupe, to Martinique, and yet most French people tend to think of this as a history that doesn't really involve them, as a history that involves the overseas territories, because it's not taught in school. And so for this not to be symbolic, we need to move toward reparations, which also includes teaching this as part of French history, not Black history specifically, French history.
Before we get on to reparations, which we will spend some time on a little later in the programme, Liliane, can you just talk about the politics of why you think that this might be happening at this point in time? We know French President Emmanuel Macron said that Code Noir should never have survived the abolition of slavery. He went on to say that French silence has moved beyond oversight, has become a form of offence. So what do you think has changed now, and what's the political element to all of this?
I think there are two parameters that we need to take into consideration. The first one is the fact that in March 2026 there was this vote at the UN General Assembly where 123 states decided to vote in favor of declaring slavery as the gravest crimes against humanity. And as you know, France, alongside other European countries, decided to abstain, which was quite surprising in France, because there is a legislation that has been there for 25 years, the Law Taubira, which describes and qualifies slavery as a crime against humanity. So, and this legislation, we basically it has its 25th anniversary this year. So we had a kind of double discourse at the same time at a national level, where there is this anniversary of this legislation, and at the international level, where France decided to abstain. And I think if we take a broader context again, is to also look at the ways in which Emmanuel Macron from 2017 has been trying to bring this question of memory of this commission into somehow using it to reposition the French position in Africa. So in geopolitics, so I think there's this convergence of these three parameters that I see that makes this debate highly very timely at this moment in France.
And I want to see if you can elaborate on that a little bit, as we heard there, Macron using this to try and retain France's influence in Africa. How big an element do you think that is to why this vote was held now?
Well, you can guess on what direction you want me to answer you. But still, of course, there is a political context, which is, let's say, leave a way how to favor such a debate in France, because you know that we have a political election, presidential election next year, and so there is, let's say, division within the French society, not on the fact that slavery has to be abolished, that Code Noir is not at all. I mean, it's over since a long time, and nobody is favoring the slavery. But behind this scene, you have also the idea of the red line for part of the French, political French class, is that we don't want to feel guilty about our history. That's what is called repentance. And in the same time, we don't want to deny what's happened. It was about try to say previously, right, is that, it's not about slavery only, it's about the colonial memory. It's not only linked to the Code Noir, it's broader. And as the guest mentioned, it's a very tricky issue, because even if the current president has tried many times to address the issue, it was politically divided, criticized.
Yes.
So it's the context is never the good one, but still we have to try and again to address the issue at school, and the issue also, the other one is do we have to financially repair? That's another point, which is like a red line for many political responsibilities.
I want to pick up on one point that you brought up there, and the guilt that some in France might be feeling over this. Marlene, do you think that this vote that actually gives France a bit of an out, that this is it stops short of, I guess, talking about France's discomfort and doesn't allow them to confront their colonial past in full, that they can, vote for this and then move on, saying that we've done everything we need to do?
Yeah, I think this is one of the essential problems. For example, if we go back to the summer of 2020, when there were global protests over the police killing of George Floyd, there were a lot of statues coming down around the world of terrible figures in human history. And in France, when people asked for the Colbert statue, Colbert is the one who wrote this edict, these laws that came to be called the Code Noir. When this question was put forward, Emmanuel Macron not only said no vehemently, but said no statues in France would be coming down. So this has introduced a bit of incoherence. If we're not teaching this history as French history in schools, if we're saying that statues of terrible figures who created the most monstrous legal code in human history, if we're saying their statues are allowed to stand, then we are really understanding this move as symbolic, as a move that says we wash our hands. And in fact, the National Assembly, while it may be that their hearts are in the right places, what we really need are for their minds to be in the right places as well. Because, they've been passing a series of resolutions. On April 17th, 2025, they passed a resolution acknowledging the double debt with Haiti. Of course, that 150 million francs indemnity. Then on June 5th, 2025, they passed another resolution saying that Emmanuel Macron should take steps to engage in restorative justice and to examine repaying Haiti. And what has come of it since that time? What has come of the commission that Macron set up? We must move beyond these resolutions and repealing laws and get to action.
Okay, well, speaking of action, Liliane, reparations. How could they potentially work? We know Macron has said that they're a question we must not refuse, committed no money, stopped short of an apology even at this point in time. How could or should reparations work?
I think we have to start by saying there is an international framework for reparative justice, and this framework identifies different forms of reparations. It's restitution, rehabilitation, financial compensation, guarantees of non-repetition, and satisfaction. So we have a framework where an international framework that has been used in different contexts that can be used here. And I think if we, and that's the first thing. The second thing is that if we look at the states, the demands by African states and the demands by the CARICOM states, there are a series of demands in terms of course, the restitution of cultural artifacts, but also demands are related to the current climate crisis, that are related to the reform of international economic systems. Reforms demands are related to memories and restitutions. So I think it's important also to listen and not just be in a position where the French state decide what it means by reparation and what reparation should look like. So to avoid this kind of the reproducing power imbalances between former colonized and enslaved states, It's important to start by listening to the to former enslaved and former colonized populations.
Right. There is also another issue. Critics in its former African colonies accuse France of collecting a colonial tax through the African franc or CFA monetary system. Now, the currency is used by 14 African countries and its value is pegged to the euro. France made independence conditional on accepting the franc. Critics say it limits sovereignty because it gives France influence over monetary policy. And 6 of those countries must keep half of all foreign reserves with the French Treasury. And I want to get your thoughts on this. Do you think that there could be any changes to this system at all?
Yeah, no, it's a very old story, let's say, that it's much more linked to the influence and the control a country wants to have on other country. It's a war, let's say. So the British colonies also had not only some dark side, but also it's something which is still, let's say, applied in terms of defense of interest and influence. That means that what you mentioned is the way how to keep interest on a country, on a region, on a continent almost, and to not only to keep influence, but to get interest, to get money, to get control. So that is a very tricky issue because so many countries in the continent are trying to let's say fight against this and fight another way how to have back their own let's say funds and linked to their own production and so on. So that means that for the moment some also countries, they are so much linked to this CFA francs that there is a lot of corruption that allow also the system to remain in place. So it's also an issue of how the political side in Africa can really fight against this, and right. I think I was clear, I hope.
Yes, indeed. Marlene, there are many people demanding reparations, basically saying that there needs to be a law that clearly establishes a principle that the crimes of trafficking and slavery have caused lasting historical, cultural, social, economic and psychological harm. Is that something that you see needs to be put in place, and how could it potentially work, do you think?
I absolutely think this should be put in place. Instead of passing symbolic laws and resolutions, a law for restitution and also that includes repayment to Haiti, because those are two different things. Restoration for slavery, which involves all of France's overseas territories and former colonies, and repayment of the Haitian double debt. These are different things, and they may need to be addressed in separate laws. And France is in a great position, actually, to calculate these amounts. For example, the French kept all the records of the enslavers who got indemnities when slavery ended in 1848. They have all the records that fill volumes, the names of each individual families, the plantations that they were tied to. They fill volumes following 1825, which is when France forced Haiti to sign the indemnity agreement. And so not only can the amounts, the exact amounts, be calculated, but the individuals who benefited can also make restitution themselves. Francois Hollande, when he went to Haiti following the earthquake, he said that France owed Haiti a moral debt. This debt is not moral, it is economic. The colonial franc system, the indemnity, the payments to former enslavers prove that France has always understood colonialism and slavery were material economic systems. They benefited white French people at the expense of Black Africans and their descendants. And this situation has created great inequalities in our world that cannot be addressed by moral actions alone. They must be addressed with legal actions.
Liliane, what chance do you think of that actually happening, that France is going to be able to move from the symbolism that we've seen to actual substance, from acknowledging what happened to apologising for it, and then from an apology to reparations? Do you think that is on the horizon at all at this point?
I think we should pay attention. I'm not sure. I would say that I have some data will arrive soon, but I think we have to be vigilant on the move that is happening now. So, as you know, Emmanuel Macron in his speech said he's going to set up a commission with Ghana, a commission that will compose of scientific scholars to do a report on reparations. And I was quite surprised to see that for a country that has been ignoring the position of or the demands from its former colonial countries in West Africa, how it is moving into Anglophone countries and trying to somehow build an alliance into advancing this debate. So I think we are at a turning point, and we don't know how this is going to be, if there's a risk of being instrumentalized, if there is a political instrumentalization, instead of really advancing on this agenda of using it more to fragment the francophone and anglophone countries into Africa. So I don't know if there's going to be there's something that is going to come out of this move. But what I'm sure is that there's a risk of dividing countries, and it is important that we stay very vigilant to make sure that the unity that has been foundational to the resolution at the UN, but also at the AU level, maintains, regardless of the involvement of France.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there as we are out of time, but we really do appreciate your time and your insight. Liliane Umubiyi, Malina Doubt and Judith Shilley, thank you so much for joining us on Inside Story. And thank you too for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website, that is aljazeera.com. For further discussion, you can go to our Facebook page, that's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. For now, that is all from me, Tom McRae, and the whole team here. Al Jazeera's coverage will continue in just a moment. Do stay tuned.